Okay, this is my video for the CISI project.
It's just me announcing.
Alright, right off the bat, we weren't supposed to be talking about like family or anything like that. What we had discussed is them talking about video games, but in the first however many minutes of the conversation they kind of realized that their interests in the video games are very different, and so they just kind of dropped it and started talking about other stuff.
I'm the second, so I'm the baby, and everybody kind of
I wish that I would have almost been prepared to talk about this. I didn't have very much elk about it, but I didn't know how to say spoiled, so I just resorted back to finger spelling, which isn't the best option, I know, when you're trying to go ASL. But I also realized very early in the conversation that John is very English. I didn't really recognize that at Silent Weekend. So there were different signs that he used that made me kind of realize, like, oh my gosh, wow, he's very strong English. And so I kind of thought that maybe finger spelling would be easier for him to understand rather than trying to expand on what being spoiled actually meant. A lot of awkward pauses.
as a cat.
Once again, wasn't ready to talk about animals. I knew John was interested in being a vet tech, so I should have expected it.
And George Brett, the baseball player.
One of those things I didn't know. I thought he was saying George Brett, so in my mind I clarified that by saying the baseball player. But I thought baseball player, but I don't know if I should have said George Brett like a baseball player because John didn't say that himself. That was for my own clarification. And also, I don't know if Carl knows or knew who George Brett is. So I don't know if it was necessary for me to say George Brett like the baseball player.
That's interesting. I didn't name him beforehand.
Once again, one of his English signs that I don't know why are so hard for me to grasp. There's him being frustrated with me, so embarrassing. I also feel like saying sorry might have been a little casual. I knew this was an assignment, but because Elsby and John, or not Elsby and John, but Carl and John were so close to Elsby, it kind of felt like it was more of like, oh, just a hangout chat instead of a formal setting like it should have been. So I don't feel like maybe the conversation was natural, or as natural as it could have been, because they knew it was an assignment also, and they kind of pulled for more information from each other and forced conversation.
I have 2 dogs. One's named Sugar, the other named Lily. I didn't name them.
I noticed myself when getting information from John, I'm more consecutive because I do try, or I think I try and get the whole concept of the message, but going English to ASL, I'm a little bit more simultaneous, which I guess that's good to recognize.
Their mother and daughter.
but at the same time, I feel like some of the statements are so broken up and there's pauses that it leaves me no choice but to go more consecutive. I don't know what that was. When I think of puppies, I think of like Beethoven and how those dogs were just kind of all over the place, all into anything. And I think that's where I pulled that mess from.
I want to be a dog trainer.
Interpreting for John was kind of hard because he was very English and he read lips. So since it was so English word order, I felt like I had to go by what he signed, what he mouthed, versus being able to pull my own concept and meaning out of it. Also, if he read my lips and I didn't say exactly what he said, like in other portions of the video, he would stop me and clarify and say, so I would correct myself as to what he said. So that was hard because I didn't get a chance to really interpret. It was more just kind of like laid out there for me.
That's why I want to be a vet tech later on. Interesting. What made you want to be a vet?
I'm glad that John kind of talks about being a vet tech before, because I didn't know the sign for tech. And since he signed it first, I knew it, so I looked a little smarter. You saw before I said 8 years instead of 9 years, and he corrected me, so I had to correct myself, obviously, with Carl. I'm kind of happy that this is so casual, because I didn't feel as silly or incompetent going back and correcting myself. But at the same time, I know it's not professional, so kind of torn about my feelings of it for it.
Then I decided that the program was not for me. So I went for animation.
Very English halfway through.
And also wasn't for me. I want more drawing.
Which now looking back on it, did he mean drawing or designing?
Now I decided to go for vet tech.
I think drawing, because he didn't correct me.
I am studying mechanical engineering.
We talked about before a little bit about what Carl does, and he was talking about how he wants to be a mechanical engineer to design video games. I had no ilk in regards to that. So I kind of relied more on less lag time, when maybe I should have allowed myself more so I can kind of maybe grasp what he's saying and get the concept more. I knew he was very smart and very intelligent, so I need to take that into consideration more and maybe give myself some more time to think about what he's really saying.
I study most programming and practically anything that I can outside of an academic environment.
Outside of academic environment, I once again didn't know how to sign it, so relied on finger spelling, because I feel like since John's English, he would be able to understand that more than my visualization.
Are you going to Johnson County for your schooling? I'm enrolled at UNKC. I intend to take a field night class at Johnson County.
This is probably where the conversation flowed the easiest, because they had more to talk about. They were kind of interested in each other's professions and how they got into it, so it was very easy. There are no real awkward pauses. So that was nice. But at this part, John was still talking, and he kind of explained more about why he decided to transfer to Maplewood instead of stay at Johnson County. But I knew he was lip reading what Carl was saying, so I thought I should still add in why, or the fact that Carl asked why the change. I thought if I didn't add that, John would think that I was missing information and getting things wrong, and I didn't want him to think that of me.